Why are American news networks dedicating all of this time to Queen Elizabeth's funeral? I think it's a good question. I mean, I think it's something, there's a weakness in the American character that still yearns for that era of hereditary privilege, which is the very thing that we escaped from.
It's time for him to modernize this monarchy, and it's time for him to provide reparations to all of those colonies. And I also think, a monarchy, it's very easy to uplift one family. The harder thing is to uplift all families.
There's a serious debate going on in this country, and you know what, I might as well just say all across the world. We know that Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the age of 96 years old. And the debate is about whether or not people can mourn the Queen without uplifting the empire itself. Because the empire itself was imperialistic. It colonized folks all over the world, particularly Black and brown people, pillaged, raped, destroyed countless lives. That is what has happened under the British Empire for generations. There was a period of time where the sun had never set on the British Empire. I want you to think about that. And so let's play the clip of Sonny Hostin on The View, really laying this out, I think, quite nicely.
We can mourn the Queen and not the empire.
Yeah,
because if you really think about what the monarchy was built on, it was built on the backs of Black and brown people. She wore a crown with pillaged stones from India and Africa. And now what you're seeing, at least in the Black communities that I'm a part of, they want reparations.
And for me, I could just never understand America's infatuation with the crown.
I studied in London, and so I lived in London for a while, and I got caught up in the pomp and circumstance of it all as well. I wanted to see the changing of the guards. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to meet the Queen because I think we all love glam and pageantry.
It just did not set well with my soul for the longest time. And as Sonny laid out, you kind of get caught up in the pomp and the circumstances because we are socialized this way in terms of America's infatuation with the crown. But there was always this small, still voice in me saying, this just does not make sense, especially since America sought its freedom and its genesis from the British Empire, and then just to have this infatuation with the crown. It's just something to that. And then if you are a student of history, if you understand the impact and the atrocities that were propagated under that crown, you got to think about this really deeply. Does her family have a right to mourn her passing? Absolutely. Should we be uplifting and edifying the crown and the British Empire? Absolutely not. I want to share another clip with you where they just really laid out. I mean, this is a great clip, and they just talk about the recent atrocities of the crown. They go deeper into the conversation and talking about apartheid and when the Queen was there in the late 1940s and our infatuation with the crown. Let's take a look.
You played a clip of her speaking in Cape Town in 1947 in South Africa.
Right.
That's the year apartheid took effect in South Africa. That was something British colonialism ushered in. British colonialism, which she presided over for all these years, had a terrible effect on much of the world. It's something that people revolt from.
A lot of truth-telling coming from both of those clips, and it is something that we have to war with as a nation, as we still have and feel the deep-seated impacts of white supremacy in this country and all across the globe. The suffering that people in other countries are enduring even to this day are linked to that white supremacist, not just frame, actions that have taken place over centuries and centuries. I mean, if you just take the continent of Africa, for example, it was carved out and European nations got to control the continent, hence colonies and imperialism. So whether it was Spain or Portugal or Great Britain, I mean, you name it, the entire continent was carved out. I mean, save Ethiopia. was standing strong, but they carved out the entire continent, and it has had a horrible impact on that continent, carving it out without respect for the natural tribal relationships, which caused a lot of angst and death and misery. And don't even get me started about the transatlantic slave trade. All of that stuff is connected to this. And so you have people who don't necessarily feel the same way about the death of the queen. You know, I had an opportunity to overhear a young lady talking on the telephone Lord, I'm dating myself, talking on her cell phone. And she was having seemingly having a conversation with a colleague of hers. She was younger. She seemed to be in her 20s. I could tell, she was most likely from Africa because I heard her talking about the different countries there and how people on both the continent of Africa, she named India. And as someone who was probably a millennial or a Z, she was just saying that she did not feel sad about this, that she wanted to see a future where the crown did not have control of other nations of color. And that is real. And multiple things can be true at the same time. And people recognizing and mourning the death of a person and recognizing that she has a family who loves her. But also we must recognize that the power of the crown itself, of imperialism and colonialism, what that empire represented, really caused a lot of death and destruction to those who were the subjects. It wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. People's lives forever changed because of colonization and white supremacy imperialism. Those things are true. This moment definitely caused on change to happen. And I agree with Sunny when she said that, this is, and I'm paraphrasing her, but this is definitely an opportunity. This is an opportunity for now King Charles to do something different, to go deeper. And there should not be 14 other places that Great Britain controls. Just should not be. They got to make this right. And King Charles has the opportunity to make this right now. Barbados has already left. We know that Jamaica is talking about leaving right now and asking for, I think it was $8 billion. It was either $8 or $10 billion worth of reparations. So there's a robust conversation happening about, is there promise in this power change? In other words, can the crown come on up to the 21st century and relinquish colonies and do right by them, to repent, to repair, and to pay those reparations? Those nations are owed those reparations. Lastly, on this point, just by extension, come on, American media. I mean, ad nauseum, we are covering this story when so many other things of greater importance should be covered. The water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi is one example of that. I would hope that we would give more time and attention to those issues that are having a deep, immediate, like right now impact on the people of this country. I know absolutely there's a fascination, and what the guy said on one of those clips that we watched, I agree with him, that America, one of the weaknesses in American culture is that we yearn for the hierarchical privilege. We do. I mean, he hit that nail on the head. That is a flaw in our character. It needs to be worked out. In the meantime, let's cover some other stuff. Glad we are doing that on TYT. There are some very real life consequences happening for people right now in America in the 21st century. And we need to deal with those things, starting with Jackson, Mississippi. Should never stop talking about that. And what's happening in Baltimore and so many other places in this country. Can we do that? Yeah, we should do that. So multiple things can be true at the same time. Until next time, keep the faith and keep the fight.